Jumping over to news now from the United States and to our Washington correspondent Simon Marks. This is because there are a lot of things to talk to Simon about this morning, because overnight President Donald Trump ordered the suspension of the green card lottery. This allows up to 50,000 people into the States through a random selection process. President Trump saying it's necessary to put this suspension in because that is how the suspect in a mass shooting at Brown University entered the country. Now, in other developments this week, he also ordered a total and complete blockade of all sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving Venezuela. In recent months, the US military has attacked 26 vessels allegedly smuggling drugs. This and more that we're going to talk to Simon about. Morena, Simon, thank you for being with us.
Morena, Susie, nice to talk to you.
Let's talk about this green card lottery, first of all. Has this been a fraught programme more generally, or is this a knee-jerk reaction that is being made by President Trump?
Yeah, it's not been a fraught programme generally at all. I mean, I think this is another example of the president seizing on a crime that appears, in this case, allegedly to have been committed by the suspect in the Brown University shootings, who himself was found dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound in New Hampshire on Thursday night. Remember, the Brown University shootings took place last weekend. 2 people killed there and 9 others injured. The suspect also is believed to have killed a professor from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in a suburb of Boston earlier in the week. Now, the suspect, was Portuguese, like, in fact, the MIT professor that he allegedly murdered. He came here on the green card lottery, and this lottery, as you were saying, brings thousands of people in every year in what successive US governments have sought to use as a rebalancing act. So it kind of favours people from nations that in the previous 5 years have not sent as many immigrants to the United States as the United States had expected. So some years it'll favour people in New Zealand and other years it'll favour people in Chad. Well, the programme is now being completely suspended because the accused shooter in the Brown University attack in Rhode Island last weekend came here as a result of the green card lottery. This is very similar to the kind of reprisals that we saw the president taking in the aftermath of the shooting of 2 members of the National Guard on the streets of Washington, D.C. several weeks ago, one of whom was killed. The alleged attacker in that case, a 29-year-old Afghan national, which led to President Trump pretty much closing America's borders to virtually everyone seeking refuge or asylum in the United States, apart from white Afrikaners from South Africa, and also launching a re-examination of visas and green cards that have been handed out to thousands of people from scores of countries now. It was originally 19. The president expanded it earlier this week. And both of these sets of decisions that the president has implemented have been sparked by individual single crimes, the first one taking place in Washington, D.C., the second one taking place in Rhode Island. But I think it really underscores the xenophobia that now lies at the heart of the Trump administration. They want the doors of the country completely closed. Indeed, they even want to engage in what President Trump is referring to as remigration by denaturalizing hundreds of people from overseas that have gone through the citizenship process here and now have passports. They are all about chucking people out of America and closing the country's doors to everyone that isn't already here.
Yeah, a really extraordinary situation. And I guess a lot of people may think, well, what is the key part of what happened at the Brown University shooting? Is it the immigration side of things, or is it the guns?
Well, of course. I mean, but also I think it's worth underscoring. We still don't know what the motive was for that shooting. He was a former Brown University student. He was 48 years old, appears to have studied at the university and possibly in that very building more than 20 years ago. But there's no indication that his attack last weekend was targeting any specific individual, at least on the university's campus. And of course, as ever in the United States, after an incident of mass gun violence, there is absolutely no discussion whatsoever about tightening gun control, about the easy availability of guns being the issue. The political calculus as we reach the end of 2026 has not changed for yet another year on Capitol Hill, and regrettably there will be more mass shootings in the United States in the year ahead, and the political calculus is unlikely to change on Capitol Hill, at least this side of midterm elections. I suppose if the Democrats were to secure majorities in both houses of Congress next November, there's a slim possibility things would change, but the conversation about gun control here is absolutely silent at this point.
On to the situation in Venezuela, which has been developing over the last few months. The point that we're at now, this total blockade of sanctioned oil tankers entering and leaving Venezuela. Can the US actually do this?
Well, they certainly have the physical power to do it. They've sailed the world's the world's largest aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald Ford, into the region. And they, as you know, have been engaged in these extrajudicial maritime attacks. The Pentagon is unable to provide any legal justification in international law for the attacks on speedboats that President Trump, without providing any proof, has said have been ferrying narcotics to American shores. He claims 200,000 lives in America have already been saved as a result of the elimination of more than 20 of those boats and the killing of more than 100 alleged drug traffickers aboard them. Those numbers don't really add up, though, because in the last 12 months, there were around 83,000 deaths from drug overdoses in the United States. So where he gets the 250,000 he sometimes refers to number from is hard to know. The assault on Venezuela has broadened, at least rhetorically, from the president over the last few days. He now is accusing Venezuela of stealing American oil. This after, of course, the United States seized one tanker on the high seas several days ago and are confiscating the 2 million barrels of oil aboard it. What he means by accusing Venezuela of theft takes you back to 1976, when President Gerald Ford, ironically, was serving in the Oval Office, and Venezuela nationalized its oil industry. So it's not really sort of theft and larceny, and it did take place a long time ago. But that is the new justification that President Trump, just in the last few days, has offered for his efforts to try and unseat the Venezuelan government. And he's essentially conceding that what he's doing in Venezuela is a war for oil. He's not even concealing that that is the motivation here anymore.
Staying overseas and the US relationship with countries around the world, of course, Ukraine comes top of mind because it's almost a year since President Trump's inauguration. Not quite. 11 months. He was promising to end that war. The talks, though, really haven't made a huge amount of progress in that time. Where are we sitting with Ukraine? Does Donald Trump still have the will and the energy for this?
Yeah, it's just worth pausing to reflect on the fact, Susie, that we've still got over 3 years of this to go. As far as Ukraine is concerned, there appears to have been some progress made just within the last couple of weeks, particularly by Europeans who got involved in trying to persuade the Americans initially to abandon that 28-point peace plan that we learnt was largely based on a Russian document that US Special Envoy Steve Witkoff had been given by one of his Russian interlocutors, and he'd then basically run it through some translation software. Now Mr. Witkoff, accompanied by Marco Rubio and the president's son-in-law Jared Kushner, has been working overtime to negotiate face-to-face with Zelensky and the Ukrainians. Zelensky, of course, doesn't want to cede territory to Russia, saying Russia is the aggressor in the war. There have been some indications in the last few days that the Ukrainians themselves are saying they think they are close to some kind of an agreement, and that the Americans appear to be willing to offer some kind of security guarantees, although there are doubts about whether that offer can necessarily be trusted and what the scale of those security guarantees will be. President Trump remains as desperate as ever, as eager as ever, I think is a better way of putting it, to end the war in Ukraine. He definitely wants to go down in history as being the president who brought that conflict to an end, but he has been trying to tilt the outcome of it in Russia's favour, and I think we have to keep a close eye on it in the next few weeks to see if they're able to bring anything across the finishing line. If they are, it's going to have to be something for Zelensky's satisfaction that is going to be significantly less onerous on the Ukrainians than the first blush of the American proposal that was presented to him, and he was basically told, you've got to sign this now, when Americans came knocking on his door a few weeks ago.
A couple of quick things to finish that I'd love to get your reaction on, and to tell us what is going on in the United States. What are people saying about the renaming of the Kennedy Center?
Well, I can tell you what the Kennedy family is saying. Kerry Kennedy, the daughter of the late Senator Robert F. Kennedy, who, of course, was assassinated in 1968, took to social media today to say President Kennedy proudly stood for justice, peace, equality, dignity, diversity and compassion. President Trump stands in opposition to these values and his name should not be placed alongside President Kennedy's. John F. Kennedy's niece, Maria Shriver, has taken to social media to say it is beyond comprehension that this sitting president has sought to rename this great memorial dedicated to President Kennedy. She makes the point that the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts was created as a lasting memorial to her assassinated uncle. She says, can we not see what is happening here? Come on, my fellow Americans, wake up. This is not dignified. This is not funny. This is way beneath the stature of the job. Just when you think someone can't stoop any lower, down they go. And even as we speak, Susie, the decorators are at the Kennedy Center putting Donald Trump's name on the exterior of the building alongside John F. Kennedy's, even though there is no evidence that he's actually got the power to do this. The Kennedy Center was created by Congress, and the renaming ought to be agreed to by Congress. And instead, as we've seen so many times in the past, the president is completely ignoring the legislature and has literally sent the construction crews there today to stick his name on the exterior of that compound. It's absolutely extraordinary.
Just a final word, Simon, before you go. Tell us how the Vanity Fair article about Susie Wiles and Trump's inner circle and those photographs is landing in the States. I can't look on social media without having yet another person, taking apart the photographs, deciding whether they're a Baroque painting or a Renaissance painting. Tell us about this one.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you've zeroed in on the photographs, because I think there's a lot more to the photographs than there is to the actual article. I mean, Washington's been a buzz all week with, Susie Wiles revealing that there were huge rows within the Trump administration about whether to go ahead with tariffs or not. I mean, we all knew there were huge rows within the Trump administration. I think there's some revelatory stuff in what she's had to say, but it's been, I think, largely overblown by the chattering classes in the salons of Georgetown. But the photographs, the pictures are extraordinary, taken by Christopher Anderson, who is no stranger to taking White House portraits. And if you look at the pictures of Susie Wiles, at the picture of Caroline Leavitt, the president's press secretary, which if you zoom in, you can clearly see the injection marks where she's applied lip liner to herself. If you look at just the sort of bizarre, sort of horrific picture that is a close-up of President J.D. Vance, of a close-up of Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who appears to be sort of wondering about whether he's lost the will to live. He seems to be contemplating whether he's taken a wrong turn in life somewhere. And it's also been noted, of course, that several of these people were sort of put up against a wall by Christopher Anderson. And, you know, was he trying to convey something by literally putting them up against a wall? I think the biggest question about this Vanity Fair project, not just the article but the pictures, is why did this White House think that they wanted to work with Vanity Fair? This is not a publication rooted in, you know, the compliant media with which Trump people like to surround themselves. So they must have got themselves into a position of some comfort where they thought this was all going to be okay. And certainly as far as the photos are concerned, and to some extent as far as the Susie Wiles interview is concerned, I think it has caused tension, embarrassment, and questions about, are we going to see a reshuffle at the top of Donald Trump's government in the early stages of 2026?
Simon, thank you very much for your time as ever. Merry Christmas as well. Thank you for that marathon roundup of news from stateside.